Night shift at an empty warehouse. I heard footsteps. On my third night shift, I heard footsteps behind me in a warehouse that was completely empty. And when I checked the cameras, I saw myself still standing in the office, not in the aisle where I was hearing them. That's when I realized something was seriously wrong, because there was no way I could be in two places at once, and yet the sound behind me kept getting closer, slow, deliberate, matching the rhythm of my own breathing like it was trying to keep pace with me. And I didn't turn around immediately. I couldn't, because some part of me already knew I wasn't going to see what I expected. And that hesitation, that few seconds of standing there pretending it wasn't real, is something I still think about. Because maybe if I had turned around sooner, I would have understood what was happening. But I didn't, and by the time I did, there was nothing there. Just an empty aisle stretching into darkness, rows of metal shelves and stacked pallets under flickering lights, completely silent again. Like it had all stopped the moment I acknowledged it. My name is Daniel Reeves. I was 27 when this happened, and I had just taken a night shift job at a distribution warehouse on the outskirts of Springfield, after getting laid off from my previous job. It wasn't anything special, just a big logistics building off a quiet industrial road, surrounded by other warehouses that all shut down after dark, and the job itself sounded
easy enough. Monitor security cameras, log activity, and do routine patrols every hour to make sure everything stayed locked and nothing got tampered with. The manager told me it was dead quiet at night, which at the time sounded perfect because I just wanted something simple, something where I didn't have to deal with people constantly. And for the first couple nights, that's exactly what it was. Just me sitting in a small office near the loading docks, watching grainy black and white camera feeds, occasionally walking through long empty aisles where the air always felt colder than it should, even in summer, with those overhead lights that flickered just enough to make everything feel slightly unstable, like the place wasn't fully settled. But that third night, the one I keep replaying in my head, started normal until it didn't. Because about an hour into my shift, around 11 p.m., I noticed something small on one of the monitors. Camera 7, which covered the back storage aisle near Section C, showed a shadow moving across the floor, quick, like someone stepping just out of frame, and at first I thought it was nothing, maybe a lighting glitch or a bug near the lens. But then it happened again, and then again, each time just at the edge of the frame, like something was pacing back and forth just outside the camera's view. And that's when I noticed something worse. There was no one scheduled to be in the building besides me, and all the entry space. And that's when I felt that first real wave of unease, that tightness in your chest when your brain can't explain what your senses are telling you. So I went back to the office, a little quicker than I'd like to admit, and checked the cameras again. And that's when things got worse, because camera 7 didn't show anything unusual anymore. No shadows, no movement, just an empty aisle. But camera 2, which covered the office entrance, showed me walking out just a minute earlier, and then showed me still standing inside the office, watching the monitors. And I froze, staring at the screen, trying to process what I was seeing. Because the person on that camera looked exactly like me. Same jacket, same posture, even the way I leaned slightly on the desk. And for a second, I actually thought the feed was delayed or looping. But then the version of me on the screen moved, reached for the logbook, and started writing something down. And I knew I hadn't done that. I was still standing there, holding my flashlight, staring at the monitors, and my hand started shaking a little as I leaned closer, trying to see what it was writing. But the angle didn't show the page clearly, just the motion, slow, steady, like it wasn't in any hurry at all. And then a radio on my belt crackled, making me jump, and a voice came through, low and slightly distorted, saying, "You're not supposed to leave the office." And I just stood there, staring at the radio, because I hadn't said anything into it. And there was no one else on shift to respond, so I picked it up and said, "Who is this?" But there was no answer, just a faint static that lingered for a few seconds before cutting out. And when I looked back at the monitor, the version of me inside the office had stopped writing and was now looking directly at the camera, completely still, like it knew I was watching it. like it had been waiting for me to notice. And that's when it slowly raised its head, just enough to meet the lens. And then it smiled. Not wide, not exaggerated. Just a small, subtle shift that felt completely wrong. Because I wasn't smiling. I wasn't even close to smiling. And I stumbled back from the desk, my heart pounding, trying to rationalize it, trying to tell myself it was a glitch, some kind of camera overlap or recording error. But it didn't feel like that. It felt intentional, like something was mimicking me, copying my movements, but not perfectly, just enough to look right until you paid attention. And then I heard the footsteps again, but this time they were coming from the hallway just outside the office door, slow, measured, getting closer, and I didn't move. I just stood there, staring at the door, listening as each step echoed slightly louder than the last, until they stopped right outside, and for a moment there was nothing, just silence. And then the door handle moved, slowly turning like someone testing it. And I remembered I had locked it when I came back in, something I hadn't done the first 2 nights, and the handle stopped moving after a few seconds, like whatever was out there realized it couldn't get in that way. And I held my breath, waiting. And then the radio crackled again, that same voice, closer this time, clearer, saying, "If you're inside, then who opened the door earlier?" And my stomach dropped, because I hadn't thought about that. I hadn't questioned how I got out to Section C, if the camera showed me still inside, and before I could even process that thought fully, there was a loud metallic bang from somewhere deeper in the warehouse, echoing through the building, followed by those same footsteps, but now faster, moving away from the office, and something about that shift, that sudden urgency, made me act without thinking. I unlocked the door, stepped out into the hallway, and followed the sound, my flashlight shaking slightly as I moved, each step feeling heavier than the last, like I was walking into something I didn't understand. And as I turned the corner towards Section C again, I saw it, not clearly, not fully, just a glimpse of movement at the far end of the aisle, a figure turning out of sight, and I ran after it. Adrenaline pushing me forward despite every instinct telling me to stop. And when I reached the end of the aisle, there was no one there, just another empty stretch of warehouse, except for one thing, something that made me stop completely, my breath catching in my throat, because on the concrete floor, in the thin layer of dust that had settled overnight, there were footprints, fresh, clear, leading down the aisle, and they were identical to mine, same tread pattern, same size, even the same slight wear on the heel that I'd noticed on my own boots. And they led forward for about 10 steps before stopping abruptly, like whoever made them had just vanished. And that's when I realized something I hadn't considered before, that maybe it wasn't following me. Maybe it was leading me somewhere. And I didn't stay long enough to find out where, because something deep in my gut told me I needed to leave. Not later, not after finishing my shift, but right then, immediately. And I turned around and walked back toward the office as fast as I could without breaking into a run, not wanting to draw attention, not wanting to hear those footsteps again behind me. But just as I reached the door, I saw the monitor inside through the small window, and what I saw made me stop again, because the camera feed showing the office now showed it empty, completely empty, like no one had ever been there at all. And that was the moment I realized I didn't know which version of me was supposed to be real anymore. And I didn't go back inside to find out. I just grabbed my keys, left the building, and drove away without looking back, quitting the job the next morning without explanation. But even now, months later, I can't shake the feeling that something didn't stay in that warehouse. Because sometimes, late at night, when I meters alone and everything is quiet, I still hear it. Footsteps, just behind me, matching my pace, stopping when I stop, like it's still trying to figure out how to be me.